Hello, I'm Gosia Kurek. I've prepared this presentation on task design for you. Well, personally, I find tasks so crucial for virtual exchange because they serve as teacher's voice in this complex learning environment. It is through tasks that we make our students' learning experiences meaningful, purposeful, directed towards the learning objectives we've identified for them. Let me start with this definition by Van den Branden. A task is an activity in which a person engages in order to attain an objective and which necessitates the use of language. This is important because it captures the major qualifying features of a task. And these are personal agency, student's agency, the purpose in obtaining an objective, and also the use of language. In general, tasks, when we talk about tasks, what we mean is the teacher's plan for learner activity. The same task, the same plan for such an activity will be realized differently by various participants and various groups. We should be very flexible here. But this is also what makes tasks so attractive for practitioners, for instructors, because they are realized differently. They are oriented towards meaning rather than form. Importantly, they are similar to real-world practices. Whenever you think of a task, just consider, well, is the task something that a real-life practitioner would engage in? If so, yeah, it can be a good task. For that particular reason, tasks have potential for creating authentic experience. And also, they engage learners on the cognitive level. This is what makes them different from activities. They are cognitively much more complex, much more demanding. And the participants are engaged in the production of a defined communication-based learning outcome. It is communication-based because it takes communication to orchestrate the efforts of all group members and create this learning outcome together. When it comes to different types of tasks, I will refer to a very important article by Rob Dowd and Paige Ware, Critical Issues in Telecollaborative Task Design. In their research, they investigated several virtual exchanges, and they came up with 12 major types of tasks. They further boiled down these 12 types into 3 broad categories that I will refer to right now. The first one is information exchange tasks, in which learners provide partners with information about their personal lives, biographies. Then comparison and analysis tasks, in which learners exchange information and, importantly, they critically compare their practices, events, products. And finally, product creation tasks, which are the most demanding ones, in which students first exchange and compare information, but the purpose is to work together to create a joint product. It can be an essay, a sequence of tasks, a report, a website, a tangible artifact. When it comes to information exchange activities, they are used usually at the beginning of an exchange. This is because they serve as icebreakers. They help learners get to know each other. They help them create a partnership atmosphere, and they prompt social bonding. Also, they serve this additional purpose of making the participants familiar with the new learning environment, with the tools available, their affordances, but also limitations. Since the students are expected to share a bit of their cultural background, they need to rediscover their own cultural identity first. If you are to introduce someone to your culture, you need to know which aspects of this culture are meaningful to you. However, and this is quite important, such tasks shouldn't be overused. They serve as I said, as icebreakers, but we need to be aware that they are mostly based on monologues. There is very little interaction usually between the participants. They are much more focused on presenting themselves rather than interacting with other people. 2 examples of such tasks, 2 truths and a lie, can be done in international pairs or groups. students present three pieces of information about their lives, and their partners need to figure out, through communication of course, which of these are true and which are not. And the task, which is very popular in virtual exchange projects, presenting oneself to the world, to the group, to potential partners. This can be done individually or in groups via forum posts, multimodal presentations, voice or video recordings. And here are like examples of how such tasks are realized in virtual exchanges. This is an example of a personal introduction by myself. I used an about me a business card to introduce myself, and the same task was given to my students, so we all just exchanged our virtual business cards. Here we used another tool, that's a sample from another exchange. This time it was a Padlet wall, a tool we'll be using in our training as well. Padlet wall is a sort of virtual wall where students can pin up text, pictures, videos, very useful for introductory tasks or for saying goodbye to the partners. And an example from our training, this is where we asked you to introduce yourselves through video recordings. We hope you enjoyed this task. Well, here the chances for interaction were greater because you could respond to other people's posts. When it comes to comparison and analysis tasks, they are a little bit more challenging because in these tasks, students are expected to collect and compare products from participating cultures. In the process, they will engage in communication, and the focus is on negotiation skills, giving arguments, and also on language pragmatics, which is why we often use them in language or culture-oriented contexts. What is important is that such tasks prompt critical thinking and encourage students to interpret the content in the light of their own experiences or their own knowledge. An example of such a task has been reported by Garth and Helm, and its title is The Same But Different. And in this task, the students can analyze two culturally different versions of the same product, like film, book, advertisement. It can also be like local interpretations, comparing local interpretations of the same global event. What is important in this task is making sure that the criteria of analysis are clear to everybody, that the students know which criteria they should use to analyze the content. Here are a few more examples of such tasks and a practical realization. The title or the title of the task is My Cultural Place in Europe. This is a task we used in our teacher training virtual exchange, in which at some point students openly voiced their need for having more or engaging in more in intercultural communication. Have a look at the instructions. In this task, we asked the students to post two pictures, one representing their local culture, the other one representing the connection of that culture to Europe. An important part of the task was asking students not to add any comments or captions. It was their partner's role to engage in communication in such a way that they learn about the true meaning of the picture. And here are the pictures submitted by the students. Each of them served as a prompt for further inquiries, for very fruitful discussions between the partners. When it comes to product creation tasks, as I said before, they are the most demanding ones, just because they require collaboration. In the process, students get engaged in vibrant, very intense communication. They need to plan, coordinate their actions. They need to make decisions. In such tasks, the focus is on both the form and the content. And in the process of arriving at the final product, they need to learn how to structure their activities. They learn how to manage the time, how to get organized, they need to set deadlines for their groups. There is very little teachers' interference in that sort of tasks. Students work mostly autonomously. Importantly, product creation tasks have a very heavy cognitive load. They are complex and they must require interdependence. A common mistake is to phrase instructions in such a way that each of the students can just do their part individually and simply pull the content together, yes, at the end. It's not true collaboration. What is important to remember is that the students should be prompted to use their views and experiences, not only materials, and that the content needs to be processed. It shouldn't be reproduced. It requires some processing, some manipulation. Also, it's good to provide the students with something we call a third space, a space where they can engage in the creation. It can be a Weebly website, it can be a blog, it can be a Google Doc space where they can work in collaboration with their partners. A few ideas for such tasks. They are fairly universal, so they can be applied to various contexts, be it humanities or science. And this is like an example of how a product creation task has been realized by my teacher trainees that I teach. Each of those images is a link to a Weebly site where my students created task sequences for their own students. If you think of those types of tasks, you can arrange them in that sort of graph. It doesn't refer, or the order doesn't refer to the sequence as such. It doesn't mean that product creation should be the very last task, or that all of the tasks should be included in the project. Rather, the graph shows the growing complexity of tasks, with information exchange tasks being the easiest, the simplest. What cannot be neglected is the preparatory phase, which applies mostly to instructors' work. This is the phase where instructors engage in coordinating academic calendars, designing tasks, preparing the plan for the exchange. But another thing that cannot be neglected is reflection stage, where students can reflect on the obstacles they manage to overcome. What makes a virtual task really good? Above all, it should push participants beyond a very simple, superficial presentation of content, presentation or representation of content, or self. Then it should challenge them to engage in the joint elaboration of projects or products. We make the students work together online to make them experience collaboration, not individual work. Also, such a task should require information processing and not mere reproduction of content. It should provide students with opportunities for reflection and discussion, and, following Garth and Rubin, they must be designed in such a way that students depend on one another to complete the task. So, for example, the students can be asked to interview experts or people in the local context. Then they pool the information together, they exchange this information, interpret it, and jointly arrive at the understanding of the subject matter and the jointly created product. If you want to learn more about task design for virtual exchange, we recommend these 3 articles, one by Melinda Dooley, in which she discusses task as work plan and task as process. Another one by myself and Anders Müller-Hartmann, in which we investigate the criteria for evaluating telecollaborative tasks. And the one I've been referring to by Rob O'Dowd and Paige Ware on typology of virtual exchange tasks. All these texts are available from the section in the spring break readings and materials. Thank you for your attention and see you online.